Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of the newest podcast for graduate student and postdoc professional development and non-academic job search support. So, what if graduate school was useful, actually? Now, despite the fact that today is April 1st, that title is not a prank or a joke. It is a succinct statement of our ethos. So today in our first episode, let me tell you a little bit about what that ethos is, what we do, how we do it, and what you can expect along the way. Our title is not mocking graduate school. Instead, it's reflecting the legitimate concerns of the many people who get to the end of their time in graduate school and think, was this useful? Was it worth it? Am I going to be able to find a job? So what I believe passionately is no matter how much time you spent in grad school, whether it's a decade or a day, it gave you skills that will set you apart on the job market. Speaking of which, I believe that you are the very best there is at something. If you don't know what that is yet, we'll figure it out together. That's what we're here for. And there's also a job that you will love that will pay you a thriving wage. And I don't just mean what a thriving wage would be in grad school. I mean a real thriving wage. And that's another thing that you can expect from this podcast. If you're not sure where or how to start your non-academic job search journey, we're going to help you with that. Now, primarily, what this podcast focuses on is converting a CV, if you have one, into a non-academic resume and cover letter. If you don't have a CV and you're not planning on applying for academic jobs and you're earlier in the process, that's great. We're happy that you're here. We're going to help you think about and frame your graduate school experience so that you can build your resume as you go along. Now, this podcast is going to come in primarily two formats. We'll release a new episode every week. Most of those episodes will be what we call mini episodes, under 15 minutes long, with a quick, to the point piece of advice and an example on how it can apply to you and help you. Once a month, we are going to have a guest episode where someone who has worked with me on converting their job materials is going to come and talk about that process and what they learned, so that if they have a discipline or experience similar to yours, you can see how it would apply to you as well. Now, we do take requests, so if you have questions about anything that you hear here, if you have burning questions you would like addressed, or if you would even like to get some help with your academic job materials and be a guest on the show, you can submit a contact request on our website. If you are not listening to this podcast on our website, that's just fine. You can find out where to find us in the show notes below. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about who I am and why I decided to do this podcast. My name is Dr. Jamie Huff, and I graduated with a PhD in American Studies from Purdue University in 2018. Now, I made myself a promise in my grad school journey that I would be on the job market for 2 years, and if I didn't get a job, then I would move on to something else. Despite the fact that being a professor is what I wanted to do from second grade on, I wasn't willing to spend years eking out a living waiting for a university to come calling. I knew that I had some skills, but I didn't know where or how to apply them. I can tell you now that I got exactly one conference interview, a conference interview for a school that was, by the way, less than an hour away from my PhD granting institution. And I did, in fact, go to a conference in Washington, D.C. for that 15-minute interview, and I was not invited to a campus interview. So after I picked myself up off the floor from crying about not getting the job I dreamed about for so long, I started going to every workshop I could find on my campus and reading every blog, book, and piece of advice out there about how to transition my skills from an academic set to a non-academic set. And honestly, it didn't really click for me for a long time. I would look at non-academic jobs on job platforms like Indeed, and they just looked so boring. Nothing interested me, and they all seemed really intimidating. I had no idea what my skills were. I had thought that I had some, but I didn't know what they were. Before coming to graduate school, the only other jobs that I had had was being a math tutor for middle schoolers, working in the seafood department of a grocery store, and being a receptionist. I didn't think I could make a living being a math tutor. I was never going back to seafood, and so for a long time, I thought that I might graduate with my whole PhD and start over at being a receptionist. And I thought, was this useful? Was this worth it? Now, there's a bigger existential conversation that can be had there, but we'll put that aside for the moment. What I want to focus on is the moment that things started to shift for me. So, my Graduate Student Association held a career planning workshop with guests from Purdue's Graduate College. And the first thing that really clicked for me in terms of looking at non-academic jobs is when our presenter said, all graduate students are project managers. And I had seen project management jobs. I wasn't sure what that meant. And I asked her to explain, and she said, sure. Well, if you've taught a class is a project. If you have executed a research agenda, that is a project. And at the PhD level, if you have written a dissertation, that is a project. So you have experience in project management. And so that is when I started to realize, oh, the reason that I can't find jobs and that I think I might have to be a receptionist with a PhD is because I don't know how to translate my skills into the skills that our employers are looking for, and I don't know how to translate their job ads into language that makes sense for me. And so that was the beginning of my journey to figure this out for myself. And I have done all right. In the past 3 years, I have worked, actually longer than 3 years now, for the past almost 5 years, I have worked with graduate students and postdocs on professional development, including career planning, including helping folks change their CV to a resume, helping them figure out cover letters, how to apply for jobs in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. And I'm happy to say that many of the folks that I have worked with have gotten jobs, which is fantastic. People need jobs to live under capitalism. But just as important to me as the person who works with them, they see their skills in a new light and they feel empowered, and they know at the end of the day that yes, their time in grad school was very, very useful, no matter what career they decide to go into. And so that is who we are and what we do here at Useful University. I am so happy that you are along for the ride. And because this is our first episode, I don't want to leave you with just a long rambling explanation of who I am and why we've put this podcast together. I want to give you a little taste of the types of tips that you can find here so you can decide if we are right for you. One of my favorite things that I talk with grad students and postdocs and academics in general about is the skill of public speaking. Public speaking is what is considered an executive skill. This is something that separates leaders from workers. Public speaking is an executive skill that helps people attain positions in leadership. It can be the difference between being a worker on the line and being a foreman. And at the same time, it can be the difference between being middle management and being an executive. So public speaking is an important skill. To give you a sense of how important, if someone shows promise at being a talented executive but lacks the ability to public speak, there's a whole genre of career out there called executive coach. And companies will shell out thousands of dollars to have these executive coaches come and help get their executives together with whatever skill they lack, including public speaking. Now, one of the great things about grad school, one of the secret superpowers that it gives you is that most of us are familiar with public speaking. We might not think of ourselves as the best public speaker. I'll come back to that in a minute. But we have experience with it, whether it is leading the discussion group in your seminar, whether it is giving a research presentation to your lab, presenting at a conference. Somewhere along the way, you've had more than one public speaking experience. And so even if you don't think you're the best at it, even if it's not your favorite thing, grad school has probably made you at least a baseline comfortable with it that other people simply are not. And this is one of the important differences between jobs in the academy versus jobs outside. One of the things that we get so used to in the academic sphere is we are always comparing ourselves upwards. We're comparing ourselves to people who have taught more classes or have better teaching evaluations or have more grant funding or have more awards or more publications or whatever it is. And we know that when we're on the academic job market, the employers are doing that too. They're looking at our resumes and they're saying, so-and-so is good, but so-and-so is also good with 2 extra publications. And that can be discouraging and hard, and it is difficult to unlearn that way of thinking. Well, I'm happy to tell you, if you didn't know, that in non-academic jobs, it's often not that way. They're comparing someone with no experience to someone with some experience. And so even if you don't think of yourself as the best public speaker, the fact that you're willing to do it is itself an asset, or to be a little jargony with you, a value add. And we can drill down even further because academia teaches us different types of public speaking. So, for example, presenting at a conference or presenting to your lab group is presenting to other professionals and other experts. If you have guest lectured or TA'd or taught an introductory level, that is speaking to people with no background knowledge. And so let's say you, like many of the folks that I work with, have done both of those things. You have experience teaching to an entry-level class, and you have experience speaking to a conference or another setting where there's a lot of other experts. A way that you might translate on that resume is something like experienced public speaker with, let me think how to put this. Experienced public speaker, adept at conveying information to stakeholders with different levels of subject matter knowledge. So that might be what you put. And all that means is that you can convey the same material with more or less detail as appropriate for the audience. And you would be surprised how many jobs find that an incredibly desirable skill. And it is listed in the desired or preferred qualifications for many, 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 many jobs. And you would be shocked how many people don't apply for a job because they are terrified of the public speaking component. But you, my dear academic, know that that is something you can do. And you don't have to be the best at it. You just have to be willing to do it and be willing to improve. So that is our first tip. That is the type of stuff that you are going to find here 3 times a month. And then once a month, we will have a guest either talking about their experience converting their academic materials to non-academic materials, what they learned, and providing examples. Or if you are brave, you can come on the show and be our guest, and we will change your materials and give examples while we are on air. So again, if that's something that interests you, if you have specific questions you want addressed, feel free to contact us at the contact form on our website. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of So What If Grad School Was Useful, actually, and I hope to see you back here next week.